Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You've had a long day, your bed is calling, and your pillow's probably fluffier than a pharaoh's ego, but tonight, we're going back. Way back. No Netflix. No toothpaste. No air conditioning. Just scorching desert winds and the distant chants of priests who may or may not be cursing your name. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Viewers from around the world, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Ellipsis. It happens slowly at first. Your breath softens, your fingers grow heavy, and the room you're in begins to blur like wet paint. One blink, then another, and when your eyes open again, it's not your room. It's not even your century. You're lying in the dirt, staring up at the kind of sun that doesn't forgive. The kind of sun that peels skin and cooks thoughts. It presses against you with a weight that's not just heat, it's pressure. It flattens you, suffocates the moisture from your eyes, dares you to breathe. Sand is in your mouth. It's in your ears. It's everywhere. You sit up fast, coughing, spitting, blinking against the brightness. What is this? The sky is cloudless, the color of bone. Around you, buildings rise like jagged teeth, sun-baked limestone, clay, and flickering shadows of people moving deliberately through narrow streets. You see workers in linen skirts, carts pulled by donkeys, and scribes sitting cross-legged under palm frond awnings, hunched over papyrus like it's Instagram. You're not dreaming. Not anymore. You're in ancient Egypt. And you probably won't survive this. Your clothes are strange. Some kind of beige linen tunic, scratchy and stiff, tied with a rope belt. No shoes. Your feet are covered in dust, and your toes already look like they've lived here for months. You try to stand, and the ground swims a little. Everything is bright. Too bright. The air is bone dry, and every breath drags in sun-heated sand like you're inhaling powdered ash. You stagger toward the nearest bit of shade, a narrow slit between two mud brick walls. It's barely enough room for your body, but you press in gratefully, leaning against the cool stone. Well, it's less cool, and more, slightly less on fire, but you'll take what you can get. People pass by, barely sparing you a glance. You hear a few snippets of conversation, none of it in English, obviously. It's ancient Egyptian. Harsh and guttural, like someone gargling secrets. You catch a word here, a tone there. Someone laughs. Someone yells. A child cries. Your brain is doing backflips trying to process what just happened. This isn't some well-funded museum exhibit. This is real. The sweat on your back is real. The grit in your mouth. The bow of the man who just walked past you like you were invisible, very real. You step out of the alley. No phones. No cars. Just the creak of wooden carts, the low bray of a donkey, and the slap of bare feet on dust-packed earth. A child stares at you. Her eyes are rimmed with kohl, her hair braided, a tiny blue scarab charm tied around her neck. She whispers something and runs off. You get the sense she's not inviting you to play. You wander, slowly, trying not to look too lost. But the thing is, you are. You're very, very lost. And very thirsty. And then, as if summoned by your thoughts, a man appears. Tall, sun-darkened skin, shoulders wrapped in a faded linen cloak. He holds a clay jug toward you. Water. You take it. You drink. Big mistake. It's lukewarm, metallic, slightly slimy, and it has floaties. You try not to gag as the water slides down your throat like someone else's bath. Your stomach churns almost instantly. Mainstream historical fact time. Ancient Egyptians drank Nile water daily, filtered only by their optimism. Boiling water wasn't common unless you were making beer, and sanitation was, let's say, experimental. And now you, a modern digestive system in an ancient world, have just ingested a blend of silt, bacteria, protozoa, and possibly a microworm named Kevin. You're gonna meet him later. Don't worry. You hand the jug back with a weak smile. The man nods and says something unintelligible. Then, he gestures, pointing toward the massive white structure in the distance. A pyramid. Still under construction. He wants you to follow. And for some reason, you do. Your feet sink into the sand with every step, and the sun continues its personal vendetta against your skull. You feel your shoulders starting to sizzle. Linen isn't sunscreen, and there's no SPF in sight. You reach the construction site, where dozens, no, hundreds, of workers are hauling stones, dragging sleds, shouting commands. The man who gave you the water barks something, and a guard steps forward. He's huge. Bronze spear. Scowl like he hasn't blinked in a week. You're handed a rope. And just like that, you're part of the pyramid team. No ID check. No onboarding packet. Just, here's a rope. Don't die. You pull. You slip. The stone doesn't move. A boy half your size yells at you, then casually lifts the stone with two others and walks off, judging you with his eyes. You don't blame him. Your arms are jelly. Your skin is starting to blister. Your brain is boiling. You've been here for what feels like forever, and when you glance at the sun, you realize it's only moved a few degrees. You check your non-existent watch. Maybe 11:30 a.m. You want to cry, but you can't waste the moisture. Someone whistles behind you. A thin man in a reed hat gestures you over to a shaded spot. There's food. Or, at least, something pretending to be food. A few chunks of coarse bread, an onion, and a handful of dried fish that looks like it's already been chewed by a cat. You chew slowly. The bread is more sand than wheat. The onion is spicy enough to slap your ancestors. And the fish, crunchy. That's all you need to know. Odd, quirky historical detail time. Ancient Egyptian workers were often paid in onions, garlic, and bread. Garlic was basically their Red Bull. Onions were considered so powerful they were used in oaths. I swear by the onion, was a real thing. As you sit in the shade, chewing your gritty onion with tears in your eyes, you watch the workers chat, laugh, wipe sweat from their brows. This is normal for them. This is life. You're the weird one. You're the soft one. The outsider. A small cat brushes past your leg. Looks up. Judgy eyes. Walks away. Even the cats here think you're pathetic. You close your eyes just for a moment. Big mistake number 2. Because when you open them, the sun's moved a little more, yes, but your break has lasted too long. You're being yelled at, dragged up, shoved toward another pile of stones. The guard from earlier points at you, then makes a slicing motion across his throat. Scholars still argue whether discipline on pyramid sites included actual execution, or just public beatings to make a point. You don't want to find out. You lift, you drag, you sweat, and as the day stretches on like molten tar, you realize something chilling. You've been awake for maybe 6 hours. You still have to make it through the entire night. And here's the kicker. There's no bed waiting for you. No pillow. No mattress. Not even a proper floor. Just a slab of stone and a sky full of gods watching everything you do. Sleep. Yeah. Good luck. Welcome to the heat trap. You stagger away from the stone pile, muscles trembling, sweat dripping like a leaky faucet, and your skin feeling like it's been marinated in the desert sun itself. The heat isn't just an annoyance here, it's a relentless force, a beast that gnaws at your every cell. Your throat feels like sandpaper, and you're pretty sure your sweat has turned into an actual salt mine by now. You try to shield your eyes with your arm, but it's no use, the sun is a glaring, unforgiving tyrant. Your vision blurs. Your legs wobble like they're made of jelly. You realize that your modern self, used to air conditioning, cold water, and evening breezes, has been thrust into a hellscape where staying cool is an art and survival is a cruel game. The ground beneath your sandals radiates heat. You can almost hear the sand sizzling. Every step feels like walking on a giant griddle set too. Well done. You think about how in your bed back home, you complain about a warm night. Here, the night isn't cool, it's just a slightly less furious version of the day. Around you, the city bustles with life, but nobody seems fazed by the heat. They wear thin linen, head coverings made of palm fibers, and the occasional amulet or two. You're sweating through your clothes like a busted faucet, and you know you look like a wet dog who just ran through the desert. You find yourself gulping air that's so dry it almost burns your lungs. There's no moisture here, only dust and a faint smell of roasted grain mixed with something far less pleasant. You realize you haven't seen a single puddle of water anywhere except the sludge you drank earlier. And your body is already paying the price. You remember a fact you once read. Ancient Egyptians didn't have modern hydration strategies. Instead, they relied on the Nile and stored water, but access wasn't always guaranteed, especially for laborers like yourself now. The idea of drink whenever you want doesn't exist here. You stumble towards a small shaded alcove beside a market stall. The stall owner, a wiry woman with a scar across her cheek, eyes you suspiciously. She offers you a bowl of something that smells like thick, fermented milk. You consider your options. Drink and risk more ancient bacteria, or refuse and risk angering a local. You take a cautious sip. It's sour, tangy, and thick, like yogurt gone rogue. Your stomach grumbles ominously. Your head swims. You sit down heavily, trying to catch your breath. The heat seeps into your bones, and you realize that if you don't find a way to cool down soon, things are going to get ugly. Just then, a group of children runs by, laughing and splashing in what looks like a small pool of water. You watch enviously, the water shimmering like a precious jewel. One kid notices your gaze and shrugs. It's the Nile, he says, pointing. But don't touch. Crocodiles. Your heart skips. Crocodiles. Here. Great. Just what you needed. You recall hearing that the Nile was a life source but also a dangerous beast. It's where civilization thrives, and where death lurks just beneath the surface. You look down at your dusty feet and feel the heat pulsing through your soles. The sweat pouring down your back has turned your linen into a clammy, uncomfortable mess. You want to find shade, water, and sleep, but none of these things seem to exist in this scorching landscape. Your eyelids grow heavy, but every time you try to rest, the heat forces you awake. You remember an old phrase you once read: the desert does not forgive the weak. You feel very, very weak. As the sun continues its slow descent, the heat traps you like a cage. Your thoughts become sluggish, your movements slower. Every breath is a task, every step a trial. You look around, desperate for a sign of relief. But all you see is more heat, more sand, more harsh sunlight. Sleep. Tonight, it might just be a distant dream. No sleep for the working class. You wake up, or at least, what passes for waking up in this ancient furnace. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed, every muscle screaming a silent protest. You blink into the brutal sunlight again, the desert heat already beginning its relentless siege for the day. But forget about waking up refreshed. That's a luxury here, one reserved for the elite. For you, the faceless laborer, the day begins with a call that's less a friendly, rise and shine, and more a bellow that rips through the air like a whip. Your first order of business. Move. Move heavy stones. Haul water. Lay bricks. Repeat until your limbs give out or the overseer decides you've earned a brief reprieve. And trust me, that reprieve is not Netflix and chill, but more, sit still and don't collapse. Your bed from last night. A thin mat, or worse, a bare patch of dirt that's been baking all day. Sleep doesn't come easy when your back hurts, your stomach rumbles, and every buzzing fly in the vicinity is auditioning for a horror movie. You trudge to the worksite, dragging your feet through the sand, muscles twitching under the weight of fatigue and sunburn. Nearby, other laborers are grim-faced, skin leathered from years of sun exposure, eyes hollow but determined. Some mumble prayers to Sekhmet, goddess of war and healing, hoping to survive another day. Your throat feels like a desert itself, dry, cracked, begging for relief. But water breaks are rare, strictly controlled. When you do get a drink, it's often the same murky Nile water you tried yesterday, now tasting even worse with the midday sun baking it. You try to imagine what it's like for these workers who have no choice. No modern medicine, no breaks for coffee or snacks. Just sweat, toil, and the ever-present threat of punishment. Speaking of punishment, oh, yes, there's punishment. One misstep, a dropped stone, a whispered complaint, and you'll find yourself dragged to the overseer. His lash, or maybe his wooden stick, will remind you that failure here is expensive. And while today's scholars debate the exact severity of punishments on pyramid sites, everyone agrees it was not for the faint-hearted. You glance around and notice a man lying motionless near a pile of stones. No one seems to notice or care. You suspect he's passed out or worse. You swallow your fear and keep moving. Even the shade offers little relief. The air is hot and still, and the smell of sweat and dust fills your nostrils. You wonder how anyone manages to sleep at night after days like this. And that's the reality. There is no day off in ancient Egypt's labor force. If you were lucky, maybe a few hours of restless sleep under a rough cloth shelter. If you were unlucky, the gods might claim you before the day is done. You stagger toward a break area where a few others sit, eating what looks like a mixture of breadcrumbs and lentils. You join them, chewing mechanically, tasting nothing but dust. One worker catches your eye and gives a bitter smile. You think you can last? He asks quietly. Most don't. You nod, even though inside you're already wondering how many hours you have left before your body gives out. Quirky detail. Ancient Egyptian workers sometimes sang while working, not to lighten the mood, but to keep in sync with the rhythm of hauling and building. Think of it as the world's oldest work playlist, but with chants and grunts. As the sun continues to hammer down, your eyelids droop. But falling asleep here, not an option. You might not wake up. And so you push on. Because in ancient Egypt, sleep isn't rest, it's a risk. Here's section 4 coming. Public toilets and private horrors. You'd think after a day like that, your biggest worry would be sleep. But nope, nature calls, and it's got zero chill in ancient Egypt. You glance around, desperate for some relief. Spoiler alert. There are no flush toilets, no bathroom stalls, no privacy screens. Instead, the public toilet is more of a pit behind some rocks or a designated corner near the river, basically, wherever it's least likely to offend the high priest. So you wander, cheeks clenched, trying to find the least disgusting spot to do your business without an audience. No luck. Kids play nearby, laughing, peeking curiously. Old men sit on nearby stones, spitting with a gusto that would impress a baseball pitcher. Flies buzz like miniature helicopters. You squat behind a crumbling wall, trying not to think about the smell, or the fact that the ground beneath you is crawling with insects you'd rather not meet. You breathe through your mouth, hoping not to inhale too much of the surrounding stench. As you finish, you realize you need to clean up. You look around for toilet paper. Nothing. The Egyptians used a variety of tools for this. Sometimes a handful of smooth stones, or water poured from a jug, or even a handful of leaves. You reach for the closest thing, a small piece of soft papyrus, and quickly realize it's less soft, and more scratchy, with a side of dust. You shiver. This is your new reality. You stand, adjust your scratchy tunic, and try to shake off the embarrassment. But here's the kicker. No privacy means everyone knows when you go. And in a society obsessed with cleanliness and ritual purity, your dirty business is a matter of public record. The Nile nearby isn't a clean oasis. It's a breeding ground for parasites, bacteria, and crocodiles, lots of crocodiles. You glimpse one slipping silently into the water, a shadow of death lurking beneath the shimmering surface. You wash your hands, well, sort of. You scoop up some Nile water, which you remember is loaded with who knows what, and splash it on your arms. You feel sticky, grimy, and deeply aware of how far you are from a warm shower or even a wet wipe. Historical fact. Ancient Egyptians were surprisingly focused on hygiene rituals despite these conditions. They bathed regularly, used oils and perfumes, and considered cleanliness a divine obligation. But the reality for most was a constant battle with dirt and disease. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which doesn't help much. Flies settle on your skin, drawn by sweat and the unmistakable aroma of labor. You glance down and spot a few tiny, wriggling creatures near your ankles. Lice. They've already found you. Your stomach twists. The thought of sharing a cramped home with dozens of others, all equally infested, is unsettling. As you turn to leave, you notice a group of women preparing food nearby. Their hands move deftly, but you watch as they swat away flies and flick away bits of dirt from their loaves. You wonder what kind of food you're going to get tonight. Spoiler: it probably won't be edible by modern standards. You walk back toward the street, feeling exposed, sweaty, and itching in places you didn't know existed. Public toilets and private horrors. Yeah, that's ancient Egypt for you. And somehow, you still need to sleep. Good luck. The Nile isn't for bathing. You stand on the muddy banks of the Nile, gazing at the vast ribbon of water that has shaped life and death for millennia. In your mind, you picture a pristine river, a natural bathtub where ancient Egyptians would cool off after a brutal day. Spoiler alert: it's not that simple. Sure, the Nile provides water for drinking, cooking, and cleaning, but it's also a swirling stew of silt, waste, and wildlife you'd rather not meet. Crocodiles, snakes, and parasites lurk beneath the surface, making a simple dip a gamble with fate. You watch as a few locals wade in cautiously, splashing water over their heads and rubbing their bodies with abrasive sand or ash. Bathing here is less a leisurely ritual and more a practical, if risky, chore. You consider joining in, but the stories you've heard echo in your mind. Schistosomiasis, a nasty parasite that infects the bladder and intestines, is rampant in these waters. The ancient Egyptians didn't know germ theory, but they certainly noticed the consequences. You glance at a man carefully scrubbing himself with a rough cloth, pausing every now and then to flick an irritated glance at the water, as if daring the crocodiles to come closer. The smell of the river is earthy, pungent, and mixed with something far less pleasant. You resist the urge to gag. Your clothes stick to your skin, soaked with sweat and dust, and you long for even a moment of clean. You notice children playing by the water's edge, splashing and laughing without a care. Their innocence is almost heartbreaking. They haven't yet learned the dangers lurking beneath the surface. You try to imagine what it would feel like to swim in these waters, cold, murky, with unseen teeth below. Probably not a great bedtime story. Historical fact: Egyptians used oils and perfumes not just for scent but as a kind of barrier against dirt and insects. They believed it kept them clean even when real cleanliness was impossible. You scoop up a handful of water, hesitating before you drink. It tastes gritty, with a sharp aftertaste you're sure is sediment, or worse. You rub the water over your face and arms, feeling the rough sand in the mix. Your skin feels scratched, raw. You glance downstream and spot a crocodile's snout breaking the surface, barely visible, but terrifying nonetheless. You shudder. You want to stay clean, but the Nile isn't your friend. It's a double-edged sword that sustains life but also threatens it. And at night, well, sleep is still a distant dream. Your body is sticky, itchy, and restless. You wonder how long you can last in this ancient world where survival means battling heat, grime, and the river itself. You realize, maybe modern life, with its warm showers and clean beds, is a luxury you never appreciated. And you definitely wouldn't last a day here without losing your mind. Ancient Egyptian bedding woes. You finally make your way back home, hoping for a moment of comfort, a chance to lie down and escape the day's brutal realities. But as you step inside your humble dwelling, the promise of rest quickly dissolves. Your bed is a far cry from what you're used to. Imagine a wooden frame with a thin reed mat stretched across it, sometimes no more than a pile of woven palm leaves or even just a patch of dirt. No memory foam, no plush pillows, just the hard, uneven surface that presses into your tired bones. You try to stretch out, but the stiffness in your joints makes it feel like you're lying on a pile of rocks. You rub your sore back, wishing you could trade places with the noble families upstairs who sleep on cushioned mattresses stuffed with feathers and fine linens. Lucky them. But even their sleep isn't guaranteed to be peaceful. Dust, insects, and the occasional rat make their rounds in all houses. And your simple bedding. It's a magnet for lice, fleas, and other creepy crawlies that feast on your sweat-soaked skin as you toss and turn. You pull a coarse linen blanket over yourself, but it's rough and doesn't do much to keep the night chill, or the pests, away. Sleep is elusive. Your mind races with worries about tomorrow's work, your empty stomach, and the stifling heat that still clings to the night air. The sounds of the bustling city outside, dogs barking, children crying, neighbors arguing, filter through the thin walls. You try to calm your breathing, but every scratch and rustle jolts you awake. The smell of sweat and dust lingers in your clothes and hair, making rest feel impossible. Oddly enough, some Egyptians believed that sleep was a delicate balance between the physical world and the spiritual one. Dreams were messages from the gods, and bad dreams could mean you were cursed or in danger. You wonder if your restless nights are a warning, or just your overworked brain refusing to shut down. Scholars still argue whether Egyptians used pillows regularly. Some evidence suggests that wooden or stone headrests were common, designed to keep the neck elevated and prevent lice from crawling into the hair. Sounds uncomfortable, right? Imagine trying to relax your head on a wooden block after a day of labor. You twist and turn, longing for the soft embrace of a modern bed. But here, in this ancient world, comfort is a rare luxury. You finally drift into a fitful sleep, dreams tangled with sweat and dust. And tomorrow, you know the cycle will begin again. Nighttime noises and nightmares. As darkness settles over the city like a heavy blanket, you lie awake, eyes wide open in your rough bedding. The heat has finally softened, but the night offers no real peace. Instead, a cacophony of sounds fills the air, each one reminding you that you're far from the safety and silence of a modern bedroom. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks sharply, followed by the eerie howl of a jackal echoing across the desert. The occasional creak of wooden shutters swinging in the warm breeze adds a haunting rhythm to the night. Somewhere else, faint chanting rises from a distant temple, blending with the rustling palm leaves. You close your eyes, hoping for silence, but instead, you find your mind wandering. Memories of the day's toil mix with the faint fear of what the night might bring. You think about the stories whispered among locals, the restless spirits that wander after dark, the demons that sneak into dreams, the curses that can follow you even into sleep. You recall that Egyptians believed dreams were messages from the gods or even portals to the afterlife. But sometimes, nightmares were seen as bad omens, warnings of misfortune or illness. You toss and turn, sweat prickling your skin. The rough linen sticks to your body, and the tiny creatures lurking in your bedding seem to enjoy their nightly feast. In the corner of your eye, you catch a shadow moving, a rat scurries past, its beady eyes gleaming. You shudder. The night seems endless, filled with noises both natural and supernatural. You wonder how many nights you'll endure before your body and mind give in. Scholars still argue whether ancient Egyptians practiced any form of sleep hygiene or rituals to ward off nightmares. Some suggest protective amulets were worn at night, while others believe certain herbs were burned to keep evil spirits at bay. You reach over and clutch your own amulet, a small scarab beetle carved from stone, hoping it does something beyond collecting dust. As the night deepens, you feel your eyelids finally growing heavy, but the restless feeling never fully leaves you. You realize that sleep here is as much about surviving the mind's demons as the body's exhaustion. Tomorrow promises another brutal day, but for now, you try to surrender to what little rest you can find. Ancient Egyptian sleep positions. You finally drift deeper into sleep, but it's hardly the peaceful slumber you imagine. Instead, your body curls and shifts in ways shaped by centuries of tradition, necessity, and cultural beliefs. You find yourself lying mostly on your side or back, sometimes even on your stomach, positions that might seem familiar, but with subtle differences shaped by ancient Egyptian customs. Sleeping on your back was common among the elite, a position thought to be dignified and fitting for those with power. But for you, the laborer, side sleeping is more practical, a way to avoid the uneven lumps and hard surfaces beneath you. You notice that many Egyptians avoided sleeping face down, fearing it might invite bad spirits or bad dreams. Instead, you try to keep your head elevated, sometimes resting on a wooden headrest, which feels more like a medieval torture device than a pillow. These headrests weren't just uncomfortable props, they served a spiritual purpose. They were believed to protect the sleeper's head and neck from evil forces and even help the soul rise during sleep. You wonder if this makeshift balance between comfort and superstition helps or hinders rest. Your arms instinctively wrap around your stomach, a gesture that seems to soothe your tired body, or maybe it's a holdover from childhood, a subconscious attempt at self-comfort amid the harshness. As you shift, you realize there's no room for sprawling out. Beds were small, and space was shared with family or even animals. And speaking of animals, many Egyptians shared their sleeping quarters with cats or dogs, both companions and protectors. The purring cat at your feet offers some comfort, but also keeps you alert to any nighttime threats. You try to quiet your thoughts, focusing on the rhythm of your breathing and the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Scholars still debate whether the wooden headrests were used primarily for health reasons, like preventing lice from getting into the hair, or for their symbolic, spiritual importance. You close your eyes and imagine lying on one of those hard blocks, balancing your head like a fragile egg. Not exactly a recipe for restful sleep. But this is your reality. Sleep positions shaped not just by comfort, but by culture, survival, and belief. You surrender to the night's embrace, hoping your body can recover, even if your mind remains restless. Ancient Egyptian dreams and their meanings. As you drift in and out of sleep, your mind begins to weave vivid images, dreams that, in this ancient land, hold more weight than you might expect. You find yourself wandering through shifting landscapes, seeing gods and strange creatures, hearing whispers in a language that feels both foreign and familiar. In ancient Egypt, dreams were more than random neural firings, they were messages, omens, and sometimes warnings from the divine. People believed that the night was a time when the soul could travel between worlds, and the dreams you experienced were glimpses into the future or glimpses of your spiritual journey. You try to remember a dream you once had. A soaring falcon, a river overflowing, or perhaps a snake slithering close. Each image carried symbolism, and dream interpreters were highly respected, guiding people through their visions to decipher what the gods might be saying. But not all dreams were welcome. Nightmares were feared as portents of doom, illness, or death. You recall that some Egyptians kept dream books, ancient manuals cataloging common dreams and their meanings. One dream might predict prosperity, another could warn of betrayal. You wonder what your dreams say about you. In a world where your survival depends on interpreting subtle signs, ignoring dreams wasn't an option. Even the pharaoh himself sought guidance from dreams, sometimes consulting priests and seers to understand his destiny. Scholars still argue how literally the Egyptians took these dream interpretations. Was it purely spiritual, or did it influence practical decisions? You feel the weight of these beliefs pressing down on your sleeping mind. Even as your body tires, your soul wrestles with the messages delivered under the cover of night. You imagine the ancient Egyptians lying in their beds, eyes closed, minds alert to the meaning behind each shadowy image. And for you, in this ancient world, sleep is both a refuge and a realm of mysterious communication. So, as you settle deeper into slumber, you let yourself be carried away on the tides of dream and destiny. The role of night in Egyptian culture. The sun has long set, and you find yourself enveloped by the mysterious cloak of night, a time that ancient Egyptians regarded with a mixture of reverence and fear. For them, night was more than just darkness, it was a powerful, spiritual realm where gods traveled and the boundary between the living and the divine blurred. You imagine the sky overhead, lit by stars and the soft glow of the moon, seen as the eye of the god Thoth, the divine scribe and keeper of wisdom. Night was when the sun god Ra journeyed through the underworld, battling chaos to ensure dawn's return. You feel the weight of this cosmic drama, knowing that each night held the promise of rebirth, and the threat of annihilation. For common people like you, night was a time of vulnerability. Without modern lighting, darkness was absolute, and the dangers lurking, wild animals, thieves, or spirits, felt all too real. You huddle close to a small lamp flickering with animal fat, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The flame is your guardian, but it feels fragile against the vast night. People told stories aloud to keep fear at bay, myths about gods and monsters that prowled after dark. You shiver, not just from the cool air, but from the ancient stories echoing in your mind. Night also marked a time for rituals, prayers, and offerings to protect the household and ensure safe sleep. Households might burn incense or place protective amulets near the bed. The protective eye of Horus was a common symbol, believed to ward off evil and grant safety through the night. Scholars still debate the extent to which night was feared versus celebrated in everyday Egyptian life. Was it a time to rest and dream, or a battleground between good and evil forces? You can't help but feel both. A time for rest, yes, but also a reminder that survival depends on respect for the unseen world. The night in ancient Egypt is not quiet or peaceful, it's alive, charged with magic, mystery, and danger. And here you are, caught in its embrace, trying to find some semblance of rest before the dawn. And social. Kant. Here's sleep and social hierarchy. You lie awake, feeling the roughness of your bedding beneath you, and you start to think about where you stand in the grand scheme of ancient Egyptian society, and how that affects your sleep. In this world, who you are shapes everything. Your work, your meals, your clothes, and yes, your sleep. The pharaoh. He rests in opulent chambers, surrounded by cushions stuffed with feathers, fine linens, and the fragrance of exotic oils filling the air. His bed is elevated, lavish, and designed for maximum comfort and status display. Meanwhile, you, a commoner, make do with what you can find: a simple reed mat or a wooden frame with little padding. You glance around your humble home, a cramped mud brick room shared with family and possibly a few animals. Privacy. Forget it. Space. Minimal. Even sleep schedules differ by status. Nobles might sleep longer, protected from the heat and noise, while laborers like you rise before dawn and collapse from exhaustion after work. Your rest is fragmented, punctuated by worries about food, work, and the ever-watchful eyes of your community. Social hierarchy isn't just about comfort, it's about survival. Those with status get better rest, better health, and better chances of longevity. You wonder if that's why so many Egyptians aspire to rise in social rank, even through service or priesthood. You think about the servants who sleep in the shadows of the palace, ever ready to attend their masters, sacrificing their own rest for duty. Scholars still argue how rigid these distinctions truly were when it came to daily life, but there's no doubt that your sleep reflects your place in the social pyramid. You feel the difference in your bones. Years of hard labor, poor rest, and cramped quarters have left their mark. As you close your eyes, you realize that sleep in ancient Egypt is not just a biological need but a reflection of societal order. Your dreams may be humble, but in this vast, ancient world, they're your only escape. Sleep and spirituality. You sink deeper into the twilight of your restless night, and your thoughts wander toward the spiritual dimensions of sleep in ancient Egypt. Here, sleep isn't just a physical necessity, it's a mystical passage where your soul takes flight and communes with the divine. You imagine your Ka and Ba, the Egyptian concepts of soul, separating from your body, wandering through realms both seen and unseen. Sleep is a liminal state, a thin veil between the material world and the spiritual one. You recall how Egyptians believed dreams were messages from the gods, opportunities for healing, prophecy, or guidance. Priests often acted as intermediaries, interpreting these nocturnal visions and offering rituals to protect or empower sleepers. You clutch a small amulet in your hand, a scarab, symbolizing rebirth and protection, hoping it shields you from malevolent spirits. You remember stories of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, a place the soul journeys through during sleep and after death. Some believed that sleep was a rehearsal for this afterlife journey, a time to prepare the soul for what lies beyond. You feel a chill, as if the ancient world's spiritual weight is pressing down on your weary body. Light incense wafts through your mind, and the soft murmur of chants seems to echo from distant temples. You are both vulnerable and protected in this sacred darkness. Scholars still debate whether everyday Egyptians truly internalized these spiritual beliefs or if they were mostly the domain of priests and elites. Regardless, you can't deny the powerful role that spirituality played in shaping not only how they understood sleep but how they lived. As your eyes close, you sense your soul reaching out, hoping to rest and rejuvenate before the sun's harsh return. Sleep here is a sacred act, a nightly ritual woven deeply into the fabric of life and death. Sleep disorders and ancient remedies. You're deep in the hazy world between wakefulness and sleep, and suddenly, discomfort creeps in: a restless leg, a racing mind, a tight chest. Sleep disorders, it seems, aren't just a modern curse. In ancient Egypt, people experienced many of the same sleep troubles as you do: insomnia, nightmares, restless sleep, but their understanding and remedies were shaped by the mystical and practical worlds they inhabited. You recall that when sleep failed them, they turned to a mix of herbal treatments, incantations, and amulets for relief. For insomnia, Egyptians sometimes used plants like mandrake or blue lotus, believed to induce drowsiness and even mild euphoria. Imagine sipping a tea brewed from crushed lotus petals, the sweet aroma easing your racing thoughts. But remedies were rarely simple. If nightmares haunted you, priests might prescribe protective charms or advise you to sleep near specific symbols like the Eye of Horus. You think about the spiritual explanation. Sleep disturbances weren't just physical, they were caused by malevolent spirits or curses sent by jealous enemies. You picture a priest performing a ritual, chanting in low tones, waving incense, and tracing protective signs over your bedding. Yet, practical advice also existed. Sleeping during the hottest parts of the day was avoided. Instead, Egyptians took short naps in the afternoon, similar to modern siestas, to conserve energy and regulate rest. Scholars still debate how effective these remedies were and whether they addressed root causes or merely soothed anxious minds. You shift uncomfortably, wishing for the relief that these ancient methods promised. You realize that the battle for good sleep has always been a universal struggle, no matter the century. And despite the rituals and remedies, sometimes sleep just refuses to come. So you lie there, counting the minutes, hoping the morning light will bring both rest and relief. Seasonal and environmental impacts on sleep. The desert heat clings to your skin even as the sun dips below the horizon, reminding you that in ancient Egypt, the environment is as much a part of the sleep experience as the bed itself. You feel the dry, gritty air filling your lungs, carrying with it the scent of sand, river reeds, and distant fires. Nights can be brutally hot in summer or surprisingly cold in winter, and your ability to sleep is at the mercy of these extremes. During the scorching summer months, the air barely cools, making restful sleep a sweaty, uncomfortable ordeal. You toss and turn, sticky linen clinging to your body, mosquitoes buzzing in the darkness. The Nile's flooding season changes everything, bringing both fertile soil and a rise in humidity, which can breed illness and disrupt sleep further. Winter nights bring a biting chill, seeping through the thin walls of your mud brick home. You pull your rough blanket tighter, wishing for warmth. You remember that ancient Egyptians used the cyclical nature of the seasons to guide their daily routines. The hottest parts of the day were reserved for rest, while cooler evenings allowed for socializing, work, or worship. But night's environment was unpredictable. Dust storms could whip through the city, shaking your fragile home and filling the air with grit. And with no glass windows, you were exposed to the elements, sounds, and even unwelcome visitors, be they animals or thieves. Scholars still debate how much Egyptians actively adapted their sleep patterns to these environmental challenges versus simply enduring them. You think about the ingenuity it must have taken to survive and find rest in such a harsh landscape. You close your eyes, imagining the Nile's gentle murmur nearby, a natural lullaby amid the desert's wildness. Despite the hardships, you find a fragile comfort in the rhythm of the seasons, a connection to the land that shapes your every breath and dream. In this ancient world, sleep is as much a dance with nature as a personal refuge. Why you wouldn't survive a day in ancient Egypt? You wake, or at least try to a world that feels nothing like your own. The morning sun beats down mercilessly as you open your eyes, already sticky with sweat from a night of restless, uncomfortable sleep. You're in ancient Egypt, and the reality hits you immediately. This is no place for the faint-hearted or the pampered sleeper. You stumble out of your modest sleeping space, your muscles stiff and aching from lying on hard mats or wooden headrests. The air is already thick with dust and the sharp scent of burning incense, and the noise of the bustling city erupts around you, vendors shouting, animals braying, children crying. The overwhelming heat makes every movement a challenge. Food is sparse, water is a precious commodity, and diseases lurk in every corner. The sanitation conditions would make your skin crawl, and the endless exposure to sun and dust will test even the toughest immune systems. You realize your modern comforts: running water, climate control, soft mattresses, reliable food supply, are luxuries here. Your sleep deprivation catches up quickly, clouding your judgment and sapping your energy. The concept of a good night's sleep feels like a cruel joke. You wrestle with insects, the lack of privacy, and the ever-present fear of spirits or thieves invading your rest. The social hierarchy means your survival depends not just on physical endurance but on navigating complex social rituals and expectations. A misstep could mean punishment or worse. Scholars still argue whether the average person truly lived as harshly as the texts suggest or if some had slightly easier lives, but there's no denying that survival required grit, adaptability, and a thick skin. As the sun rises higher, you realize that surviving just one day here is a brutal trial, let alone thriving. You close your eyes briefly, longing for the soft pillows and cool sheets of your own time. But in this ancient land, comfort is scarce, and every day is a battle against heat, hardship, and history. You wouldn't last a day here, not without embracing the relentless rhythms and demands of a world far removed from your own. And yet, somehow, millions did. Their resilience is staggering, a testament to human endurance that echoes through the millennia. So as you prepare for another relentless day, you take a deep breath, brace yourself, and step into the unforgiving sun, knowing sleep was a rare and precious luxury, and not one you can afford to take for granted. You've traveled deep into the rhythms and shadows of an ancient world, felt its heat, its whispers, its unyielding demands. Now, as the night draws near again, let your breath slow, your muscles soften, and your mind release the weight of time. Imagine the Nile's gentle flow nearby, a quiet song that soothes even the weariest soul. The stars blink softly overhead, distant and calm, watching over you like timeless guardians. You're wrapped in a blanket of ancient stories, woven from dust, dreams, and resilience. Feel the cool night air brush your skin, carrying away the day's burdens. Let your heartbeat find a gentle rhythm, steady, slow, peaceful. The world you just left behind slips further into shadow, replaced by the soft hum of your own breath, the quiet rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird. You are safe here. Your body is resting. Your soul is free to wander, to dream, to heal. As your eyelids grow heavy, let yourself sink into the soft embrace of sleep, a rare treasure across the ages. Whispered goodnight from centuries past lingers in the air, a gentle reminder that despite all hardships, rest is possible. Sweet dreams, traveler. Sweet dreams. Like, share this video with your friends and subscribe our YouTube channel, the best way of sleeping, for more related updates.